Stefan, welcome. I appreciate you joining me today. How you doing?
Hey, Bob, I'm doing wonderful, and hello to all of the Rainers online. Thank you for spending time with us today. This is awesome.
So we're going to talk about your trends report, and this is something that you've been doing. These are now, wait, so this year you broke it up a little bit, right? You did the normal trends report that you've done for what, I mean, you've done 18 previous editions of this trends report, is that right?
The first edition, which we wrote about trends impacting your and my beloved industry, was 1997. So that's about 16 years ago. Yeah, 17 years ago.
So he's been looking at and following what's going on in our industry basically since I got out of high school. But this year you did something a little bit different in that, and correct me if I'm wrong, I would imagine the last couple of years a lot of what you've been dealing with is how technology is changing our industry. And so this year you decided to break it out, and you've got a complete report just on technology. Is that right?
Yes, we have always included technology as part of the trends report, but every year, as you well know, for the last 5, 6, 7 years, the technology just seems to get, Bob, every year it's more, it's internet and it's mobile and it's big data and social media, and as it got more and more, when we were working on the 2013 report, we said to ourselves, guys, maybe it's time for us to actually pull the technology out and put it separately because it is such a big part of our lives.
So I've read through the trends report a couple of times, and I actually haven't had a chance to read the technology report, and I feel like I'm just a bumbling moron for that, but that's all right. What we're going to do throughout the next hour, we're just going to kind of bounce back and forth between some of the stuff covered in the trends report, and then we're going to throw in a few of the things covered in the technology report. We're also going to give everybody a chance to download one of those chapters out of the technology report, and you guys can check out these reports, and hopefully by the end of this hour you realize like there is some unbelievable stuff in here that can really help you as you sit back and look at, okay, where am I at, like where is my business at, and what are the things that I need to be looking at in terms of moving my business forward. So you can check that stuff out at retrends.com. Stefan, just from the get-go, because I had somebody on a comment on the blog post say, oh, I was looking back through Stefan's report from 2012, and it looks like some of that stuff that he wrote in 2012 should have been in 2013 report. So give me just a little bit of an explanation, I guess, of what do you consider a trend, and how do you really kind of look at these things as you get ready to pick, like, what are the trends for a certain year?
That's a very wide question. Because we've been covering it such a long time, there are clearly technology and other business and strategic concepts and trends that filter through many, many years. So, I mean, MLS is not new, education is not new, portals is not new, social media is not new. So what you do is when you look at these trends, you try and look at the last 12 months and you say, what part of that trend has recently shifted or changed or evolved or developed or morphed into something different. So although we talk about technology, technology is not new, but there was a time in which email was new. There was a time in which blogging was new. There was a time in which social media was new. So we look at the evolution of those trends and we say, which of those trends are significantly going to shape our lives? I, of course, have had many people also feedback and say, well, I don't quite agree with that trend. I would have taken another trend. But it's most likely because you're looking at the real estate world, one, through your glasses, which, of course, is acceptable. You're looking at your pocket, your market, your area, your zip code, your state, your company, or you're looking at a trend maybe, as I said, for the last 12 months. Where we have at this point in time, I mean, we've written more than 20 reports. We're tracking more than 300 different trends. We've written over 4,000 pages. I've interviewed more than 5,000 brokers. I have 10,000 hours of research into this subject matter. So, when you've written 1,000,000 words on a topic, you tend to get your hands around where we are with something at this point in time. And that's what the report is. It's a snapshot of where we have been in the last 12 months and which of those activities, which of those initiatives do I believe, based on our research, is most likely going to have the biggest impact on your life, our industry, your company, as a franchise, as a brokerage, as an independent company, as a leader of your association. What's going to have the biggest impact on your life? We usually look at, let's say, about a 2-year window. I can't predict the future 20 years out, but we're very good at predicting the future 2 years out, because you can see the patterns, you can see the shifts, you can see the directions, you can actually see what's going to happen.
I don't know if you're a Malcolm Gladwell reader, but I think Gladwell says that 10,000 hours makes you an expert in something. So, but you just said, look, you can't predict the future. So, you know, I would have to imagine not every single trend you've put in there ended up being something that like dramatically impacted an agent's business or a broker's business, but you've definitely hit the money a few times. So give me, like, looking back, what do you think was maybe a trend that you were maybe a little bit in front of that you got it, you hit the money on that particular prediction or analysis of the trend?
Yes, we have been very fortunate that our research has panned out. If you were to dial back and you were to go look at, let's say, our 1997 or 98 report, so if you're looking back about 15 years, in the 97 report, I remember there were 3 or 4 things which we very, very boldly were very specific about. We said in 1997 that the listing race is not about 1 million listings. Now, remember, 1997, we just started putting listings on the web for the first time. We didn't have Zillow. We didn't have Trulia. We just had the beginning of Realtor.com, and we had only maybe put up 20% of all the listings in the country on the web. And we were already saying at that time, guys, it's not about getting to 1 million listings, which is what everybody was predicting at that point in time. It's about one day within 10 to 20 years building an ultimate database of over 100 million pieces of information about all of the properties in the entire country.
Which is essentially what Zillow and Trulia have done, right?
Yes, and RPR. So, I mean, today that's where we are. At that point in time, if you think back 15 years ago, most of the people in the industry, less than 1/3 of all the people in the country had a mobile phone. We were already saying in 1997, in writing, we said that the mobile phone is going to be the most ideal internet access tool that you are going to have, and it is going to revolutionize the way you look at listings. That's 1997. Wow. We're doing it today and tomorrow, today in recent times.
All right, so I put this question up front to just kind of give people a sense that, like, you guys have been doing this for a long time. You're not just like you're not just pulling these things out of the air, right? I mean, you're really looking at what's going on. I think if somebody was to read the book, you really get a sense for just how in-depth the research is, and you look at it from a historical perspective, and so you guys are doing a pretty good job. So let's just kind of overarching. All right, and as we look at like the top 10 trends from each of the 2 books, which one do you think will have the most impact? And just give me a short answer, because we're going to go through each of them, kind of talk about them a little bit more specifically. But from the trends report, which one has the potential to impact an agent the most?
Short one. The mobility of connectivity. How's that for 3 words?
Okay, that's good. The mobility of connectivity. So the fact that we can now access information from anywhere. Right?
You got it. The fact that you can anywhere, anytime, any place, through almost any device, connect to almost any part of the transaction or any participant in the transaction with ease and fairly simply and fairly quickly, and in most cases at no cost.
All right, we'll probably come back to that a little bit. So let's go into the trends report itself. And trends number 9 and 10 dealt with the housing market and then the fiscal cliff, which we were against as you wrote this in late 2012, but we're against it essentially again. There's not really a question here that, because the agents can't impact this stuff, right? Like, we can't impact what Congress is doing, or we can't impact the overall market. But when you write about these sorts of trends, like, what are you hoping to impress upon people in the industry, or maybe what are some things that they should be looking at and considering as it relates to the overall market?
Bob, a good observation you just made there. Most of the trends which we write about in the trends report or the technology report is about those things that you can have an influence in, that you can actually use, buy, implement, strategize, and change and shape the way you do business as a realtor, as a broker, as a manager, as a real estate professional. But to make sure that the trends report is a comprehensive document. I mean, I know of many association leaders at an association and even in franchise companies that buy many tens or a few hundred of this report every year, give it to their entire management team and say, listen, this is the minimum bar. You've got to read this to get onto the same page so that we can start talking about the future of our company or our association with all of us understanding at least the same baseline. So to that extent, we have to cover things like the dot-com bubble and the economic recession and the housing bubble and the housing stimulus and the global financial crisis and the stock market and the foreclosure fiasco. We have to cover that so that we can make sure that we are comprehensive in our covering. But we do understand that this is more as a kind of an overview, and that is usually why we list it as trend number 10 or 9. It's significant, but it's sort of almost background information.
So it gives people a context for what they're about to read about. And number 8, which I skipped, was government's role in housing. And you had this, I mean, really a great discussion on the mortgage interest deduction. And I mean, if you guys are interested in the mortgage interest deduction at all and its likelihood to either be eliminated or remain, Stefan really breaks it down in there to a level that gave me a whole new kind of understanding of what both sides of that issue even are. So trend number 7 is professionalism in real estate. And you know, this particular section for me was, I don't want to say it was eye-opening, but it was really interesting to juxtapose all of the other industries out there really with the real estate industry in terms of what's happened historically and where those industries are. And we're talking industries like accounting, or industries like lawyers and doctors and these kind of professional industries, and to take a look at them side by side with where the real estate industry is. So I guess my question here is, Stefan, where do you see one day or where these big companies, and trend number 1, we're going to maybe get a little bit close to this, but this Berkshire Hathaway, these big companies come in and really make the real estate industry more of like a corporate feel. And let me just, so you talk about like automated management systems, standards of practice, verified accountability, a defined customer experience, some of these things that really define like a professional organization. Is the real estate industry moving towards that?
A great debate, and one which we have had as long as I've been doing research, which actually is now 30 years in total, 20 years which we've been about writing, but 30 years in total for the research. And it's always been there. Are we a profession, or are we professional? Can we become professional? What is professionalism? What is the minimum bar? So we've had this discussion in maybe about 5 or 6 previous issues. Our current discussion is to say that we're not saying that we are like doctors or dentists, and we're not saying that we are a profession, but we do have certain activities, we do show certain movements in our industry which are not unique only to our industry. You referred to a few of them just now when you said accounting and law, but I mean, if you look at healthcare or pharmaceutical or engineering or the food service or the retail business or the trucking business or the travel agency business, although we're not exactly the same like any of them, we have similar activities. We have licensing laws, we have ethical standards, we have boards, we have associations on a national or regional, state level, local level. We do many things that sometimes reflect similar to other industries. And the benefit of our research is we don't try in the report to dictate to you what's right or wrong. The research is always to try and find what is out there that we as an industry can learn from and benefit from. And are we moving more towards corporatization? Yes, slowly but surely. The fact that big money, corporate money, has entered our industry in a huge way, is it going to impact our industry? Oh, there's no question. It's not even a maybe, it's for certain. And when you say, well, it hasn't changed yet, it's because changes in our industry generally take somewhere between 1 to 2 decades. It doesn't mind what it is. The growth of franchising, the involvement of corporate America, licensing laws, mergers and acquisition, the recent growth of Keller Williams, all of those activities took a long time. I mean, if you take some of those initiatives and you dial them back, you'll see that their roots go way back. So is there a decline in some kind of way of the professional in general? Yes. Is corporate America getting involved in many professions and businesses? Yes. Are they trying to find a recipe to build scalability and more accountability? Absolutely. Our life of being free independent contractors is not going to survive forever.
There's one in here that for me really resonates, I think, in the real estate industry, and that's a defined customer experience. And so, like, if you look at accounting, right, and if you were to walk into 10 different accountants' offices, you're going to probably get a different experience in each of those offices. But if you were to walk into 10 different, like, Ernst & Young's, right, you're going to get a defined customer experience in each Ernst & Young office, no matter what city in the country you walk into it in. So in the real estate industry, like, as an agent on the ground, what things should they be thinking about to really define a customer experience?
You know, a brand is determined through the consistent, high-quality delivery of a excellent experience. So if whether you are a shareholder and you've invested capital to buy a company and you want to create value for your shareholders, and you have bought a brand, a company, an identity. Oh, you've put up some there on those. So if you take some of those brands out there, I mean, if you take a Coldwell Banker brand, probably arguably one of the very, very best real estate brands in the world. It's been around for over 100 years. There have been hundreds and hundreds, if not maybe even more than hundreds of millions of dollars spent into building that brand. Now, it is not as a consistent brand as you mentioned in maybe accounting, because in accounting you have people that are on a certain academic level and they are employees and they have to go through an articleship. And you can become a Coldwell Banker employee relatively quickly. You can become an agent relatively quickly. So the barriers to becoming an agent or an agent of any brand for that matter, not just Coldwell Banker, is a lower barrier than it is to become, let's say, a partner or an accountant at a Price Waterhouse or a similar kind of like-minded company. However, these companies in real estate that you've put up there and some of the others are trying to, and have already been trying for a long period of time, to at least create some level of knowledge and trust. And it's that relentless conviction and passion to excellence, to superior excellence, that creates and help establish the uniqueness of a brand.
Okay, so and somebody said, hey, you skipped number 7. What was number 7? Number 7 was revisiting organized real estate. And if you've the one comment I have on that particular trend, if you've ever served on a board in one of your local realtor associations, you absolutely have to read trend number 7, because there's some stuff going on from a legal perspective in the industry right now that is almost a little bit chilling, but we've got a lot to talk about. So trend number 5 here, the value proposition of a real estate brand, and you kind of transitioned into that. You go through and you basically say, because the question always, I think we ask the wrong question in the industry, and you kind of hint at that, right? The question we always ask is there value in working for a particular brand? So is there value with me being a RE/MAX agent versus being an independent broker, or a Keller Williams agent versus being, having my own office or something? The real question is there value in having a brand, regardless of if it's who you work for or if you build your own brand? So I guess my question would be, if I'm an agent out there and I want to build a brand, right, a personal brand, what should be some of the first steps I take to building a personal brand as a real estate agent?
Whether you're building a franchise brand or a local agent or broker brand, or you're building, exactly as you've now said, an individual sales associate brand or agent brand, the difference is not that significant. The difference is fundamentally the same. You've got to be consistent in the delivery of what your message is.
Okay, so let me just stop you right there real quick, Stefan. Consistent in the delivery. Does that mean that, like, somewhere in my notebook or on my computer, like, that I should literally have written out, like, what a customer is going to get when they do business with me, and it needs to be something that I repeat in every single instance? Or is this just something that, like, floats around in your head?
No. Things in your head just don't work, Bob.
Right. Okay.
If you want anything to be successful, the more tangible you can make it. So if you can sit down and actually have a strategic session with yourself, and you can create a strategic intent and a strategic plan, and then a business plan, and then an action plan, and then a marketing plan, and you can put it to writing, and you can think it through, I mean, that's better than just having it roam around somewhere in your head. Now, again, the smaller you are as an individual, meaning as a business, if you only do 1 or 2 or 3 transactions a year, then of course it's not important enough to go and spend weekends of time trying to build a plan. or a business plan. And if you're a huge corporation, you might actually spend multiple weekends, or you might have a whole 1-week retreat, or you might write a 100-page plan. So the success is not the length of the document, it's relevancy towards the size and the scalability of your business, the passion and the desire you have to make the business you have as an individual, a company, or franchise bigger. You've got to have the vision. You've got to be consistent in the delivery of that vision and that mission. You've got to have a quality level that you are going to draw a line in the sand and going to say, this is where I draw the line. This is what I do. I'm not going to go beyond that level. And you've got to maintain that, because you've got to build the trust with your client. In the case of a franchise, their client is a broker. In the case of a broker, their client is an agent. In the case of an agent, their client is the consumer, the home buying or selling consumer. So it doesn't mind where I build that trust, but you've got to build that trust, and you only do that when you can show whoever is your client that you have the knowledge, you have the experience, and you are willing to deliver excellent service at whatever level that might be.
You talk a lot in that particular chapter about like on the street interviews with, not a lot, but you talk about like on the street interviews with people, and really that consumers aren't able to differentiate between any of the major franchises. And I would imagine that trickles down to there's really, they can't differentiate between like what one agent offers and what another agent offers. What are some of you mentioned like the Good Life team, you mentioned some of the other like at a real small, like a team or individual agent level, some of the brands that have really done a good job of doing this. Like, how do they differentiate themselves inside of their markets?
Yeah, it is very hard. It is very hard. On a consistent nationwide basis, there are very few real estate brands that have been able to have themselves stand out uniquely. And even in those cases, so I mean, brands that are national identities, which will come up in every survey just about which you do, are the Remaxes, the Sotheby's, the Coldwell Bankers, the Century 21s. I mean, those are brands which frequently pop up, whoever does the survey, in almost whatever state you're looking at. Now, again, somebody might on the telephone say, well, in my state or my town, one of the brands you might have mentioned is not as good as a local brand. And that might very well be the case. I mean, there are, on the screen, which if I look at the screen which you have in front of me, I mean, Edina is a local brand. Howard Hanna is a local brand, or a regional brand, or a state brand. And in their given state, they are exceptional. They may even be, in some cases, a bigger brand or a more well-known brand than a national brand. But if you move one state across or two states across, that brand Edina might have a lot of value in Minneapolis, but it has little value, if not no value, maybe in Southern California and San Diego. So yes, we do have some local people, and there are many examples. I mean, Edina is a regional brand, but if you went really local, you might say, you mentioned the Good Life team in Austin, but you've got Hawaii Life, which has done a good job on TV. You've got the Do Good Real Estate. You've got Nest Realty, and there are many others. Sometimes we attach a value to those brands because of companies like Inman and Risk Media, my own organization, Stephen Murray at Real Trends, that tend to talk about these brands. So as we research the country, some of these brands pop up on our radar screen, and we look at them a little bit more in depth. And when we see somebody with the passion and the commitment to do something well, we tend to write about it and talk about it and give them as an example. And then people think, oh, wow, well, the Good Life team is going to take over the world. It's a great company in Austin, but it's a relatively small company. They have not expanded, to the best of my knowledge, even outside Texas, let alone anywhere in the country. So it is still just a local brand, which we give as an example and say, look, there is an example of somebody who does not necessarily belong to a national brand, yet they strive to deliver services and products, and they use technology as if they were trying to be, or were trying to show that they could be a successful brand. So you could be
it's a focused effort for them. Like the Good Life team is absolutely focused on their mission, and they know what their mission is.
Absolutely, and there for them it's about the paperless transaction, the paperless agent, the tablet, DocuSign. So is that unique only to Good Life team? No. Anybody in your call here today, Bob, can use DocuSign and use an online transaction and use those products and services. That company just has a very clear vision of who they are, what they're going to do, and what they stand for, and they've used that well.
Got it. All right, let's change pace a little bit, and let's talk about one of the tech trends. And you and again, I haven't read it, so I'm going to be getting just as much of an education here as the rest of the folks on the call. You talk about podcasting, and really I think you talk about it in terms of your ability to market to a particular niche. Talk to me a little bit about, first off, how is podcasting pretty easy? Like, and then maybe what would an agent talk about, or give me an example of a strategy out there somebody's using with podcasting that's working and getting them in front of more consumers.
You know, the way you phrase that question, we could spend the rest of the hour just...
You know what? Every single one of these questions, Stefan, could literally be an hour-long conversation between the two of us. If
yes,
like I'm waiting to say, should I jump in? Should I let him finish? I got 30 more questions that just popped into my head.
Yeah, the tech report is really for agents. You know, as the trends report, we tend to focus a little bit more on the visionary broker leadership management kind of side of things. So the trends report are for those people on the call today that want to be leaders, that are leaders, that would like to be at the cutting edge of decision making. The technology report is a little bit more for the actual guy who's going to make it happen, the doer, right? It's the agent at the rock face, the guy who says, okay, I'm tired of ActivRain and Facebook and Twitter and Stefan telling me that I should use technology. Please tell me how I should do that. What do I need to do? So the technology report dives into blogging and Twitter and podcasting and video and social media and mobile media and tablets, and it says, here are the products. This is what they are. This is how they work. Here are your options. Here are the steps. This is what I would do if I was a real estate professional. And then we use one or two real estate professionals in our industry that have used those products successfully as a kind of a case study or example. So in the case of podcasting, you asked now, how do I create a show? So if you had to create a show, start, again, like anything else in life, with the planning start. So number one is plan. Before you even hit any kind of record button, before you jump on a show like this. I mean, this show of yours today is going smoothly, but you've put a lot of work and effort into ActivRain and into ActiveBob and the show and marketing the show and packaging the show. So you took decisions like, who's your audience? What's the platform? What's the equipment? What's the goal of the show? What's the demographic of the show? How many people can dial into the show? Who are you going to do? Is this going to be pre-recorded? Is it live? Are you going to allow questions? What platform? Those are the kind of things you have to just start off with, and that's only step one. Right. Step two is you've got to now prepare. So you've got to actually say to yourself, is this going to be an hour show? Is this a 60-minute show? Is this going to be a repeat? Is this every week? Is this once a month? Am I going to form a series? Is this a one-parter? What's the format of the show? How do I create a running order? How did I start the program? How do I close the program? So now you've got to actually go into the nitty-gritty of preparing for the show. You've got to go outline the show. You've got to think about future coming shows. You've got to manage the content. You've got to create an editorial calendar, so you can market somebody 2, 3, 4 weeks in advance. You've got to decide the length of the show. You've got to give this podcast of yours a name. Is it going to be the name of your company? Is it your name? Is it the area? Is it the city? Is it the town? What kind of information are you giving? Are you giving it to the consumer? Are you focusing on buyers? Are you going to be for seniors? Is it luxury homes? What kind of information will be sexy and exciting for a new buyer or seller to listen to your show? Why should I listen to Bob Stewart on ActivRain? And you're going to give me 10 reasons because it's a great show. It's ActivRain. I'm giving tangible information. I'm helping the agents of ActivRain. I'm helping other agents. So you've got a whole list of stuff, and you've got to make sure that you hit all of those things. Then, of course, you've got to promote your show. So the list of stuff you have to do to create a podcast, I detail them in the trends report. I think we spend, the technology report, I think we spend 4 or 5 pages, step by step, bullet by bullet, giving you the points which you have to do before you even create a show.
But don't let that stop you, right?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Give me one example then of somebody like in the book, like what maybe niche are they looking at, or share a little bit about one of the examples.
Well, there are many people, but one which I like to refer to is somebody which I met on Twitter, Michael McClure. Michael McClure created a podcast show which he calls Raise the Bar, and he has interviewed, I think he's probably, if I'm guessing now, I think he's interviewed about 50 people, if I have to remember the number roughly correctly, in that ballpark. It's a 1-hour podcast. He uses the platform Blog Talk Radio. He's also created a Facebook page called Raise the Bar, which is the same as the name of his Blog Talk Radio program. He's also created Twitter handle, and he uses Twitter and Facebook to drive people to his Blog Talk Radio show. And I'm not sure what Michael's numbers are, but he has one of the more active and more successful Blog Talk Radio shows for an individual. And he's not an ActivRain community of 100,000 people. He's not a big ERA or Prudential or Real Living group of people. He's, for all practical purposes, a fairly small agency in, I believe he's in Detroit, or in the outskirts of Detroit. He's in Michigan. So if one person like that can do that, that shows you that you can also get a following of a couple of thousand people listening to your stuff.
All right, so we're back to real estate trends here for a second. The Gentle Revolution, which is essentially a chapter where you talk about consumers and how they've changed and how what their needs and their wants are have kind of evolved to where we are today. And from this, there's a lot in each of these chapters, and I keep saying that, but so there's there's 15 different ways we could take the discussion on this particular chapter. I have a question about agent ratings, because you go in there and you talk about in pretty much every other industry or every other service that people are looking to buy, that they're able to go online today and look at ratings or look at, and really evaluate the service that they're about to purchase. But in real estate, especially at like a brokerage and an agent level, these things have been a little bit slow to happen. And essentially what we have now is we've got companies like Zillow and Trulia who have ratings on there. And then, as an agent, I go in there and I invite my clients to rate me on Trulia or rate me on Zillow, or maybe I've been rated on Yelp or something like that. But there's not really this like industry move towards the idea of agent ratings. So I guess my first question would be, why do you think that is? Like, why do we not put sales numbers out? Why do we not, do something like the Houston Association of Realtors did, which is essentially try to put together this agent rating system, which was then kind of shot down by their members? Like, what is it that's holding this back from happening from the industry, right? Not from kind of these players outside like Trulia and Zillow.
You fundamentally came back again to the fact that we have independent contractors. So changing the industry, real estate, brokerage, agency, is very much like herding cats. We have well more, let's just take a round number, a million realtors, and I know that licensed agents, of course, are different than realtors, but let's just take the realtor number. And again, I understand that some of the people are not full-time active in the industry, but we have round numbers, a million people that each have a different opinion. And therefore each agent is on his own, whether he's in favor or not in favor, he is indirectly resisting change on every single level. So when somebody like a Houston Association, which is one of the most successful associations in the country, and arguably the second biggest local association, when they try and roll something out, they usually have put a lot of time and money into the research to see whether this is a valid trend. And they already looked at this 4 or 5 years ago, and they said, right, this is coming. And we've had realtor ratings in some kind of a level for the last 5 years at least. So is it moving forward? Yes. Is it slow? Yes, it's slow, but it's like everything else. We didn't jump on email. We didn't jump on websites. We didn't jump on e-commerce. We didn't jump on online transactions. So everything is taking time. Is it gaining traction? The answer is again, yes. There are sufficiently enough third parties that are doing it that I don't believe that you can't get the water back into the dam. The dam wall is already broken. There are holes everywhere in the dam wall.
Okay, wait, so Stefan, on that account, like the water is obviously coming out, right?
Yeah.
Why?
Sure.
Why still do we look and go, well, that, I don't know, maybe we can put a couple patches up there at the top, and like, I just don't understand it, I guess. And you say it's
because the industry doesn't move as a unit. We talk about the industry as if it's a single entity, and that there is one person who can take the decision for the entity, and there isn't.
Right.
It is literally a 100,000-man march, and there's 100,000 plus people that actually have to be influential. Yes, we have many followers, but we have prima donnas and we have leading people that, because they currently have a niche in the market, or they have a uniqueness, or they have a market share, or they are strong, or they are powerful, or they are with a big brand, or they've been in the market for 30 years, or whatever historic reason. If they say, I'm not going to do that, it's one extra finger plugging the dike, right? But at
Mm-hmm.
some stage, that person is going to either lose the race because the pressure behind the dam wall is too big, or that person is going to retire, or somebody else is going to come in and be a young whippersnapper and is going to grab some market share to the extent that the people then change. So change is coming. We can't stop that. But it happens probably, as I said earlier on in the discussion, somewhere around about 1 to 1.5, maybe as much as 2 decades. It takes 10 to 15 years to change anything in our industry.
So by that record, agent ratings started happening 5 years ago. We're 5 years from the industry at large saying, okay, we'll put this information out there.
Another 5 to 10 years. Yeah. Yeah.
So I had this discussion last night with my girlfriend. We were literally, we had an argument about what kind of information consumers actually want. And I was sitting back there saying, look, if I was moving to a brand new town and I didn't know any agents out there, but I was trying to find a good agent, like I would want to know things like average days on market. I would want to know things like what is your list price to sales price percentages, and how close do you actually get to what you say you can get for the house, and like these kinds of numbers. But obviously, like, we're not putting those numbers out there, right? Consumers can't find this data. Do you think consumers want that data? Because my girlfriend was like, I don't care. I'd like to get to know the agent. I want to know that they can handle my needs. And she was like more from a personal side, and I'm going, no way. Like, I want to know at a very minimal, how many houses have you sold? Do you think consumers want to know that information?
Again, we can't identify consumers as a single blob of people, right?
Okay.
It is so many different people. And then we also know that the way a Civic buys and a Boomer buys and an Xer buy and a Y and a Millennium buys is significantly different. And then within each of those groups, we have, as we know, if you've taken a Myers-Briggs or a DISC or a Meyer, What Animal Am I quiz, you also know that we have different personality styles. So a analytical Boomer is going to buy significantly different to a gregarious, outgoing, high-I millennium kind of a person. So yeah, do some people love a touchy-feely agent that loves me to death? Absolutely. And do some other people like an analytical agent that gives me all the statistics? Again, yes. That's why this industry of ours is such a wonderfully eclectic, diverse industry, and it is so hard to not to be successful. You can be successful with any one of those skill sets. You can be successful in any one of those generational niches. But the complexity of our industry is to harmoniously aggregate them into a total combined single passion or vision or unit and try and think you can have one strategy. That doesn't work. That's the hard part. We have a need for statistics. Hence Zestimate's working, right? So people love statistics, they love information. But when you say, well, I want to know what the sales price is compared to your listing price, well, again, half the agents in the market selling a listing, it's not their listing. They're selling somebody else's listing. If you went to Australia or England where you can only sell your own listing, well, then that statistic would be very valuable. In a country where you can sell somebody else's listing, I wouldn't say that statistic has no value, but it decreases in value. It's lesser value.
All right. So let's flip back to a tech trend here. Why video is worth 1.8 million words. And all of you guys, if you want to get an example of the type of research that Stefan and his team put into this sort of stuff, and really the kind of, the suggestions and the observations that they give you, you can go get this particular chapter of the Tech Trends book and download it and read it for free. And you can go to retrends.com/free. But this is the section where Stefan, you basically say, you answer the question, should an agent be using video, and then kind of how should they be using video. So my question, and I'm assuming the answer is yes, should an agent be using video because it's worth 1.8 million words, right? But why and then how?
Yeah, the chapter, it's a great chapter. Again, as I said before, we had people like Michael McClure and Sean Carpenter and Jeff Lobb, and Kelly Mitchell is the one that helped with this chapter, and Chris Nichols and Jay Thompson, Christina Wise of the Good Life team, and Kendall Young. So we pulled a variety of people to help us on the respective chapters so that we could get their hands-on practical examples and life experiences. So in this case, Kelly Mitchell helped us to create for that chapter sort of a kind of a best practices, right? So what are the things you should be doing when you create a video? And she was able to help us with the research as well. We looked at the best franchises that use video, then we looked at the best brokerages, then we looked at the best teams, we looked at the best individuals, and we actually list for you, I think there's something like about 40 or 50 examples in that chapter of each of those different levels of who we think is a good example of an agent who currently uses video effectively, so that you as an agent, as an ActivRain member, could go out and go look at those as an example. Because in the case of video, I could talk about it today, but you got to see it. I mean, it's really about the imagery. So you've got to go look at those. We give you all of those URLs. Just go look at them for free. Go take a couple of hours on a Saturday or a Sunday, and you will be surprised what people are doing with video to sell real estate. It's just awesome.
One of my, Ben Kinney is the guy, if you've been on ActivRain Universities before, you've heard me bring up Ben's name. He's a mega agent, right? 500 plus deals, yada, yada, yada. Something that he always said to me is he never invented something. He never took an idea he never brought an idea into the industry from scratch. If he wanted to learn something, he would go out and he would find who's doing this very effectively, and then he would essentially copy them, right? I mean, he would just look at what they're doing and bring it into his own market. And so, I mean, that's the same idea here, right? Now, why is video important, though?
Because we are increasingly living in a very visual kind of generation and period of time. It is becoming, we are inundated with copy and visuals and text from all sources. I mean, we all know about texting and emailing and websites and books and reading, and we just don't have the time of day anymore to digest through all the things we have to digest. And video allows us a simpler, easier, quicker way to look at something, maybe even on the road, on the fly, and come to the conclusion whether this house, this neighborhood, this school, this community, this realtor is somebody who I want to continue and build my relationship with. And if you're not doing that, you are just merely losing a huge channel. I mean, YouTube, arguably the second or the third biggest search engine behind Google and Yahoo, you're losing a huge channel how people could potentially come to you and say, I like you, Bob. I want to become a Rainer. I want to join your webinar. Please let me in, right? So don't lose. That's what these books are about. I mean, I don't understand how I can take 10,000 hours of research and I can put it for you, and I can ultimately give you a book for $150, and you don't want to read it. I mean, so there are so many ideas that you can just take one idea and you could become wealthy out of it. You could implement it. You could save yourself time and money. Yes, go to this guide, and then the one which you're going to download, which you refer to. There's an example of Kendall Young and Kelly Scarr and Greg Fisher and Ian Watt, Sean Carpenter. Go look at all of their videos. Great stuff. Great stuff.
What about Twitter? Tweeter, Twits, what's this Twitter? I mean, so in your chapter in there, I mean, you talk about, because I think Twitter's one of these things where, or I've always thought of it as one of these things where, if and really this applies to anything. If you're not going to use it in a fashion to generate money or to market your business, and there's not some end game, then you probably shouldn't even be using it as it relates to your business, right? Maybe you use it personally, but as it relates to your business, if you don't have a plan of attack and a way that you're going to use something, don't use it, right? If you're going to blog once a year, a blog's probably not something you want to consider for your marketing. Right, but so talk about Twitter for a second. How are agents out there actually using Twitter to make money? And I realize that's, the entirety of the chapter, but maybe boil it down. What are a couple of things they might be doing that really works with Twitter?
So while I'm listening to you, Bob, I'm at the same time here, of course, sitting on my iPad looking at my Twitter feed, and I see that, for argument's sake, Andrea Geller, who's an agent in Chicago, which I know, has just sent out a tweet, and she has tagged ActivRain, and she's tagged you, Active Bob, and she's tagged me, and she says she's listening and learning. Andrea is a good example. I met Andrea through relationships like this. I have built my relationship with Andrea and strengthened an online relationship with her. I don't know, people like her, and I think at the moment I have 3 Twitter accounts, and I think between the 3 Twitter accounts I have 55,000 friends and fans and followers. And 95% of those people are people that I've met online. Now, do I know all of them? Of course I don't. But I will tell you that out of those 55,000 on my 3 accounts, I probably know, and if I say no, I recognize the first name, I recognize the last name, I probably know which city or state or country or company you work for, and I will recognize your picture. If you close your name, I will most likely remember your name. Of at least 5% of that group. So there's 2,500 people that I did not know before Twitter, and I have been able to build a relationship with them, and you could call it some kind of friendship. Now, it's not the same as the guy which lives down the street, which I see every day when I go home, and the guy who I've maybe had 20 barbecues with. It's not that level of a friendship, but it is still a friendship, and it is a friendship that I have come to learn to cherish very deeply. So there are many people that I might have never met in real life, but I know them through the online relationship, and I will today consider them a relationship which is not superficial. It's a strong one, because we talk once a week, once a month, electronically. And I think that you can use it for business. I would say today that between LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, I probably do about somewhere between 30 to 35% of all of my business online. It comes from a social media relationship.
Do you guys go, like in that chapter, do you get into like the specifics on like how would you find local people in your market to follow? Do you talk about how do I, like, so if I'm a real estate agent, right, and I could go out there and set up, and I actually have some of these searches set up where somebody's like doing the search for looking for a home. I have that search set up, and I'm actually shocked at how many people every single day put on their Twitter looking for a home. And from time to time, and I don't do it every time I see one, but from time to time, like if I see somebody says, looking for a home in Miami, I can't wait to move, or whatever, like I will literally go and say, hey, you should get a hold of Inez, right? She's a great agent in Miami. You would love working with her. I will do that. But do you guys kind of go through those specifics of okay, how do I use this thing? But like more importantly, how do I find people in my local market that I can start to have conversations and build relationships with?
Yeah, we do, absolutely. As I said, the trends report is more strategy, vision, thinking, leadership. The technology report, the one you jumped to now, the one we're talking about, the Twitter, that's the practical one. So again, in the Twitter chapter, we actually, again, give you 250 examples of agents and brokers that are using Twitter effectively. So we give you their address, their Twitter handle, and we say, go look at those people. Then we interviewed a bunch of those people, and we took the guys in the top 10 or 20, and we said, all right, so what are your best practices? How do you do this? Do you daily, hourly? And then what have you learned after now using it for a kind of while? What are your best practices? So for example, in the Twitter chapter, we talk about how do you build a relationship? Do you tweet to everything? Do you respond to a bad tweet? How do you respond to a bad tweet? Why should you respond to a bad tweet? How do you pay it forward? How do you do something if you don't know somebody? How do you start that relationship? We explain that it's not about that one-night stand, that it's a kind of a marathon. We explain to you how you should leverage that long-term relationship. We talk about the fact that you should be consistent in your delivery, and we show you examples of that. We give you an overall strategy, and we give you examples of people that are actually doing it at the moment. We give you a glossary of terms of some of the codes which they use in the terms. So it's about as practical as you can get. Yes.
So here's another one, right? I wonder how many people on the call have gone and Googled themselves. Like, I don't do it often, but I have Google alerts set up for my name, so if something gets written about me, I'm going to know about it. But how important is it for agents to manage their digital footprint?
Fantastic question, Bob. Fantastic question. Because I think that many people in our industry approach the answer from, unfortunately, 180 degrees the wrong point of view. Okay. When you ask people and you say, you Google yourself, it's almost like this, well, I'm not that arrogant. I don't do that.
Right.
I don't want to look at myself because, so it's nothing to do with arrogance, my dear friends. It's not that you're blowing up your trumpet here, or blowing your horn. It's not that you're trying to make yourself look bigger than you are. You are looking through a window of life, whether it's Google or Wikipedia or Yahoo or any one of those search engines. You're looking at a window into how you look like to other people. I don't think that I have attended a meeting or a webinar. I mean, yesterday I was in Houston with a big title company. Today I'm talking to you. Last week I was at an event speaking to Berkshire Hathaway. The week before that I was at the Keller Williams conference. Next week I'm flying up to do one of the associations in one of the other regions. Before I go to any one of those events, I will absolutely, most certainly Google you. I will go find out what does ActivRain say about you. I will see if NIR says something about you. I will look at your personal page. I will look at your LinkedIn page. If you might have a Wikipedia page, I will look at your Wikipedia page. And I will take that 5 to 10 to 15 minutes to quickly page through the important stuff, because I know that in Wikipedia the information is going to be very current, because most likely you update that page yourself. I will look at your Facebook to see how do you act in social life? How does your family look like? How many friends do you have? Do you actually talk? I will go see if you have a Twitter to see when was the last time you tweeted. Are you active or are you not active? I will go look at Wikipedia, because I know if you happen to have a profile there, it has been cleansed and cleaned so many times that probably there's no fluff in there. I will go look at your website, and I will go look at Alexa to go see what the traffic is to your website, to see if any of the statistics you're telling me about your website is even remotely true. Even if Alexa has discounted numbers or old numbers, I will still look at it, because it gives me a kind of indication. There are many parameters. I will look at your social mention score. I will go look at your clout score. None of them are exact. None of them are perfect. None of them are good. But they are a better filter than nothing.
And taken as a collective, Stefan, I mean, they give you a pretty good sense of who somebody is, right?
You bet. You bet. Better than we knew about people 10 or 20 years ago. Now, remember, when I reach out to you, Bob, and you and I connect, as you said, we had a 20-minute discussion even before this call started, and you and I have shared maybe a half a dozen emails just in the last 24 hours. Mm-hmm. So when I went and did a cloud score on you, when I went and looked at your ActivRain page, it's not that was the sole determiner of my relationship with you, but it is a significant and influential one. And we should all, as real estate professionals, make sure that the image which you are sending out, whether you created it or whether a realtor rating created or Yelp created it or somebody else put it up. I mean, if you ever spoke at an NAR convention, your bio is most likely online. Whether you put it or not, their NAR most likely put it up for you.
Right.
So go check it out. Go see what it is. Now, don't get upset if you don't like what's online. I mean, I have something like, I don't know, 46,000 pages that currently have details about me. You can't police it all. You can't control it all. But when you read my stuff, you will get a general sense of who I am, and you will see the consistency in my messaging, and you will realize this is the person you're dealing with.
I'm sure in the tech report, like in this particular chapter, you guys dive into this stuff. But for all you guys on the call, like what I would say just at a baseline on getting started on this, Google your name and look at least the first 10, like that first page. What's on that first page? And then how many of those pages do you control? Right? So like if it's your Twitter and your Facebook, you control those things. If it's Yelp, you don't control that, but you might darn well want to get in there and see if anybody's reviewed you on Yelp, right? So just take a look at that first page of Google and see how much of that stuff can I control, so that because your clients are absolutely Googling you. Okay, if they end up on your website and they become a lead and you're reaching out to them with drip emails and you're trying to get them on the phone, they're Googling you. Make no mistake about it.
So here's a good example. I've just done it while we were talking. I just put my first name and my last name so that we don't get any hybrids, and I put it in parentheses on Google so that it must be an exact match. And there are 53,000 hits on my name, exact spelling, correct spelling, no misspelling, in parentheses. The first one is Wikipedia. I don't control that. The second one is my site. The third one is my site. The fourth one is Twitter. The fifth one is my site. The sixth one is LinkedIn. Seventh one is Facebook. The eighth one is Amazon.com. The ninth one is YouTube. And the 10th one is ActivRain.
So there you go. I mean, and you, like, if anybody was to look at all 10 of those, they would have a really darn good idea who Stefan Swanepoel is.
The information on, I mean, I know all those 10 sites, and I have visited all those 10 sites at least once in the last 30 days. And I would say, although it's not always my words, I mean, Wikipedia phrases it in a different way than I would have liked to phrase it because it was written by somebody else, but the information is fundamentally accurate.
All right, back to the regular trends here. The real estate office of the future, and you go in this particular thing and talk about three like kind of trends that we're seeing in offices around the country. And I think okay, there's one. Okay, the first one is big offices, and we're talking about like Keller Williams, these mega centers that they have out there. And then the complete opposite end of the spectrum is literally a virtual office, and there's a company called EXP Realty, and you know, it's funny because I got to look at their software like before it even launched. Glenn, one of the guys that's involved with EXP, he showed it to Brad Anderson and I, and it's really cool. But it's literally a virtual office where you can go in there and walk around, and it's like one of these role-playing games or something, and you can have meetings, and you can share files, and you can do all this stuff, anything almost that you would do in a regular office, you know, short of handshakes and hugs. But the middle one, which is kind of this coffee shop idea, or this the Starbucks kind of option in real estate. Explain to me why you think that this is something that companies are embracing and that consumers are maybe interested in.
Oh, I love the virtual one, and I love the mega stores of Keller Williams, but I absolutely also love the cafe lounge one you're referring to. It is a unique mix between the two, right? So we all know that technology is having a significant influence of our lives. So the cafe lounge plays on that usage of technology, but it also says, I understand that in some cases, depending on which generation you come from or which community you live in, there is also a need for a touchy-feely kind of, I want to know there's a bricks and mortar street down the street, right? An office down the street. So what they've done is they've taken a traditional office and they have chopped it down. So they've taken maybe a traditional office, which on average is around about, let's say, 8,000, 10,000 square feet. That's about the average for our country. And they've cut that with 75%, and they take it down all the way to, let's say, 1,500 to 2,000 square feet. But they kept the same around kind of agent count. In some cases, they've even upped the agent count. So they don't actually have a bullpen for agents. They don't have an office for every agent. They have 2 or 3 transaction centers or 2 or 3 escrow offices or 2 or 3 areas where you can have a kind of a cafe lounge, and you come in and you have the virtual kind of office environment, and you can come in once a day or once a week or once a month. It doesn't really make a difference. So the consumer hardly ever goes to this location, but this location is available should the consumer maybe want to go in. Now, I know the consumer, of course, can buy online, can use DocuSign and all that kind of stuff, but some agents want to go in and go feel the office, feel the receptionist, feel the environment in the office. So this is a great place to be able to do that. There are many companies doing this at the moment. Anybody can. The best example, which I like to quote frequently, is a company, United Real Estate, that has now raised money and is focused exclusively on rolling this out in the residential industry. They've opened, I think, something like about 6 or 7 offices across the country. I know Philadelphia, Houston. So they've opened a few, and I think they have something like about another 67 or 68 or something like that, some number like that, scheduled for the next 2 or 3 years. So I think this model is definitely going to get some traction.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think that like anywhere in the consumer's psyche is what an agent's office is like, and as a determinant of whether they're going to work with that agent or not? And again, I realize there's lots of people out there, lots of different types of folks, but I mean, like, do people care?
Generally speaking, I would say the answer is probably no.
Okay.
But the fact that I can go down the street to Best Buy does have a convenience factor. So although I do most of my shopping on Amazon.com, and I actually do, and I purchase a lot of stuff there because of the convenience of the delivery, the cost effectivity, the fact that it comes to my home, I would still acknowledge that as much as maybe 10 years ago, 100% of my electronic shopping was at the Apple Store and at Best Buy, and maybe the old CompUSA in Circuit City, but over time, yes, it's moved online. But there is still that one day a month that I like going to Best Buy because I want to go touch something, I want to look at something, I'm using the time to browse around. And if that stage there wasn't a Best Buy in my neighborhood, I would be peeved. I mean, I like to go to the store from time to time. And when I do go to the store and it's a nice store and it's a big store and has all of this stuff, do I actually buy stuff which I did not think I was going to buy on Amazon? The answer is absolutely yes. So having a store does absolutely have a benefit. I don't think we are going to see all real estate offices disappear. That's not going to happen. Definitely not in our lifetime.
But they're changing.
Oh, they're changing. Yes, a lot.
You guys, I can't. So we're at the top of the hour here. I got one last trend left. Do you want to hang around? We'll talk about Berkshire Hathaway. You got a couple of extra minutes, Stefan, or you got to run?
Of course, I have always time
Okay.
for ActivRain, always.
Fantastic. All right. So your number one trend is some of the moves that Berkshire Hathaway has made into the real estate industry. And so for you guys that aren't aware of who Berkshire Hathaway is, this is Warren Buffett, right? So Warren Buffett, they own a massive portfolio of companies, and as a part of that, in the last year, they've essentially gobbled up some real estate franchises, some real estate brands. What does this mean to the average agent? So if I'm in a market where Berkshire Hathaway has just taken over an office, and it's now a Berkshire Hathaway Home Services office, what does this mean to me if I'm an agent in one of those markets?
On the short term, probably not that much, because many of the brands which they took over are going to stay the brands which they were, maybe for a period of time in a transition, and in some cases like Real Living, maybe forever. So as a result of that, it might not have an impact from a brand point of view, but it will have an impact because Warren Buffett doesn't buy and flip companies traditionally. Warren Buffett's company, Berkshire Hathaway, is a generally consistent long-term player. When they get involved in a space, they tend to dominate that space. When they get involved with a company, it's investment after investment, it's consolidation after consolidation, and they almost always invariably become a very healthy, strong competitor in that space. And they are already the second biggest, largest residential real estate conglomerate in the world behind Realogy. So they're already number two. So whether they become number one or not, I'm not sure that they even want to become number one, but being number two in any space in the world means that you are significant. And don't think for one second that they're local companies like Edina, a traditional company, which there's been Home Services of America. They have acquired Prudential. They are going to rebrand some of the offices, not all the offices, but many of the offices, to Berkshire Hathaway Home Services, and they still own the asset Real Living as well. They are going to become a serious player, and I believe that their offices and companies will be very professional, very ethical, good players. They will use technology well, and they will probably have access to more capital than the average real estate company has. So will they become a serious competitor? Absolutely, yes.
This gets back to the professionalism thing, though, right? Like, do you envision 10 years from now where Berkshire Hathaway has taken these offices and literally turned them into something different than what we see today, in terms of like the standards of practice and the defined customer experience? And I mean, because that's really what these guys are good at, right? Is taking an industry and really putting the controls that Berkshire Hathaway companies have become famous for around their assets in that industry. Like, do you see that happening? Do you see them trying to have a more structured approach? I guess 10 years from now, to me, it would look like you actually have employees.
I'm going to take one step back to take two steps forward.
Okay.
20 years ago, none of the top 10 companies were publicly held by one shareholder, or one shareholder held multiple companies. Today, 80% of the top 10 companies are held by two shareholders. We've already seen roll up. 10 years ago, the majority of real estate companies were not very proficient in transaction management, online transaction, and using email and websites very effectively to get a significant market share. Today, all top 10 of the companies are doing that. So have we shifted? Yes, we've already shifted. Are we going to become more corporatized? Are we going to gradually, over the next 10 years, maybe move towards some kind of an employee compensation structure? I think the answer is yes. How quickly? I don't think quickly, but I do believe that we will see larger players with more capital dictate more quality control rules and request that the real estate industry become more accountable for its transactions and its process and its brand and its quality of delivery that it has been in the past.